Warning: tube amplifiers have lethal voltages inside them. Please do not attempt to build, test, or repair these without understanding and following all safety protocols. Hey y'all! And there goes Dolly. Yay! So, anyway, we're going to start doing the fab work on the chassis for this EL84 spud amp. I think this is going to be a fun, simple, fairly quick and easy project to do. So, kind of covered how we're planning on laying everything out on the last video. So let's just jump right in and start drilling holes. Well, today we're going to start putting this thing together. We're going to mount the transformers and then put the tube sockets in. So we're going to be doing what I call direct measuring. And by that I mean we're going to set the transformer on the chassis where we want it, and then we're going to use something like this little screwdriver or a little scribe, whatever you want to use for scratching the powder coat to make the mark. And we're going to come in here and we want this edge even with the side of the chassis. So we're going to come in here in this slot and mark the center of where this hole's going to be. We do it in this back corner. Come up here in the front, mark it. And then come back here in the back and mark it. Okay, then I get my caliper and I just double check that we're getting these holes in about the same place. Yep, those two look good. And those two look good. Now, the other thing you want to do at this point, we need to drill the holes for these wires to come through. And so don't ever assume that this is centered between these two holes. A lot of times they are, but sometimes they're not. And so in this case, that's about 1 inch and 1 inch. That looks centered. So come in here. Let's go ahead and just double check this. This should be approximately 2 inches, which it is. So we come in 1 inch and mark that hole, and we mark that hole. And then again, just to double check, make sure we get it. Okay, nope, that's good. And none of this has to be exact. We're not building a space shuttle here. So I'm going to go ahead and now mark where we're going to put the output transformers. Same deal. Same deal. We want this even, and we want this close to this edge, but you'll see the edge of this rolls over. And you don't want it like right out there where it's kind of hanging off that rolled off edge. So pull it in just a little bit. And then do the same thing. Come in here and mark the centers of these holes. And it's got a long slot here. So if you don't get it absolutely perfect, it's not the end of the world. And there's going to be a little sideways slop because the hole we drill is a little bigger than the screw is. Just like that. So the next thing is, well, we know this is going to be sitting about here, like that. And we want as much gap between here as we can get, between the AC and the output transformer without these being butted right up against each other. And you probably want, this looks about good, but let's go ahead and put like 10 millimeters between the two transformers. And then we still got a nice gap over here for the power transformer that's at least a finger width. And so we hold this down, we come in here and we mark the holes for this output transformer. And I'm sure some of you guys who are machinists for a living are probably cringing at the way I do this. And if somebody wants to get super accurate about where all these holes are going, feel free to. I'll move this one up just a little bit. Like that. Make these marks a little heavier now, so I'll know which ones I'm using. And all four of those holes are the same distance from the back. Like that. So we got those holes laid out, and then again we want to double check that the width between those is 2.1 inches or 52 millimeters. We can go with that. So 26 millimeters looks like the center. The other thing to note is sometimes this hole will be offset forward and back of where these are. Sometimes these little lugs sit out a little further, like on Ed core. So just make sure that on the transformers that you have, the wire hole would be centered up on the holes for the mounting, which on these little ones we're using today, they are. So we're going to mark this hole. So you can see I'm zipping along here today. I want to get this thing built. And then let's just double check that we got these. That one needs to come out just a little bit. That one's right on the money. And that looks like about 58 millimeters from the back edge. And then these holes in the back here are about 12 millimeters from the back edge. So that hole needs to come up a little bit. And that hole a little bit. Here we go. So now we get our scrap wood. We want to put that underneath so that we don't dent this while we're marking these holes. We come in with our center punch and give them a good little smack. If you're building this on an aluminum chassis, obviously you don't have to, or don't want to smack it as hard. You'll end up denting it. But for this steel chassis, you want to give it a pretty good little solid smack so that it puts a nice mark there. And then I'll make sure we got our wood moved down here more towards the end where the transformer is. Just like that. Now we're going to start off with a 1/8 inch drill bit to get our pilot holes for all of these and start drilling holes. And I'll probably edit ahead to where I get all of these drilled. And try to make sure that you have the wood underneath where you're going to be drilling. It helps to keep the chuck from like slamming into the wood and putting a mark on the powder coat. As you can see, we've got all of our holes drilled. Now I'd like to come back and just double check that all these holes fit where we want them to be. Those look good. Those look good. And those look good. So next we come back with the larger bit that is this is a 3/16. We're going to be using 4mm hardware to bolt these transformers down. And so 3/16 bit looks like it gives a little bit of clearance, so there's a little adjustment, but not too much where we're going to have an issue with it flopping around in the hole too much. So I'm going to drill all these. Obviously when you're already done a pilot hole. You don't need to put much downward pressure. Just let the drill bit do the work. And now we got all the mounting holes drilled. The next thing we need to do is figure out what size we're going to make these holes for the wires to go through, and go through our grommet selection, which is a little kit I got off Amazon. And because they have different numbers of wires that come through. And so you want to find a grommet that just allows the bundle to go through without stretching the grommet. That looks like a good size right there. And it'll probably work for this 3-wire one as well. Yep, works fine. So then I start looking for a drill bit that will fit the inner rubber part. Got lucky, that one looks like the right one. So we'll do a test hole on one of these back ones and then see how the grommet fits. That way if we have an issue, at least it's on the one that's in the back where you don't see it. The next thing we want to do is come back with a fairly large drill bit, like a 3/8, and just barely put any downward pressure in. And we're going to go ahead and bevel off all these other holes that are the mounting holes too. And we want to make sure we do them on both sides, especially the bottom, because that's where there's the majority of the burrs are going to be. Okay, here we go. So let's see how this grommet fits, and you just kind of push on the edge until it pops in the hole, and that fits nice. It doesn't slop around, but it wasn't real hard to push in. You don't want them where they're too tight, because then the edge of the metal can cut into the rubber and defeat the purpose of having the grommet there to start with. So I'm going to go ahead and drill these holes out here, and then we'll do the grommets for the power transformer. And sometimes when you're trying to put the grommet through, it doesn't want to come all the way through. Like if you look at this one, see how it's just not all the way through? You need to push on the back side and then get like your fingernail or something and kind of walk it around till it's down in the hole all the way. Here we go. We have the mounting holes for the output transformers and the grommets for the wires to go through. The next thing we want to do is pick the grommet for the wires for the power transformer. And obviously they're a little larger. I think we can still go with the same size for these two heater wires because they're a little larger in diameter. And that'll work okay. But obviously this larger bundle of wires is going to need a bigger grommet. I go ahead and just trim off these loose ends like that so it's easier to deal with these. And again, we don't want too small a grommet. That one might be a little big though. Let's see if this one here will fit. This might be a Goldilocks thing where one's too big, one's too small. But nope, that one's just right. And you want to make sure that if you're putting a bigger hole that you don't get it too close to the edge where the grommet won't fit. But as you can see, that's not going to be an issue with this one. So I'd rather put the large bundle of wires over here to the side because this is where all of our AC power is going to be. So let me punch these two holes and get these grommets in place. And there we go. We have the mounting holes drilled and the grommet holes drilled for all of our iron. And the next thing we're going to do is figure out where we want to put the output tubes and mark, drill, and punch those holes. Okay, so we got our grommets all in. We went ahead and put the iron in and threaded the wires through. They all look good. Got one bolt holding each transformer down just so I can kind of get a little glimpse of what this is going to look like before I decide where I'm going to put the tubes. We got two output tubes and we got one rectifier tube, and want to put a little bit of space between the transformers and the tubes, but I also want to keep them a little back from the front edge too. And 35 millimeter center point from the front edge, 40 from each edge, and then this tube's going to be 115 over. So I want to go ahead and first just make a little mark here of approximately where the center of the tube is going to be. And then we'll come in and mark things more accurately. We're going to come in 40 millimeters, like that. And we'll come in the exact same distance on this edge. And then we're going to come over 115. Basically, we're just centering them in front of the transformers that they're going to be connected to. So 115 is close to the center of that. And 40 is pretty close to the center of that. That's pretty close to the center of that. And then the last thing we want to do, and this is a fun new little tool that I just picked up off Amazon, and it was only $20. It's a little marking tool that looks like this, and this will be the first time I've tried to use it, so like I said, this little guy was only $20, and it's got a little roller here, so got a little thumb screw where you can lock down your adjustment, and we set that on 35 millimeters, so they'll all be the same distance. So we're going to go ahead and unbolt these transformers, and we'll jump right back in a second. Okay, so we got those unbolted. We're going to come back with our scrap wood here, put it inside. We got our 3 marks here, and we're going to get our center punch and mark all 3 of these holes. And we're going to drill our little 1/8 pilot hole. And since we're going to be drilling up to a 3/8, we're going to go ahead and drill these out with an intermediate size. And then finally we're going to come back and drill it to 3/8, which is the size of the shank of our chassis punch. And you can see the wood underneath each of these holes, so you know that you've got the hole backed up with a piece of wood as you're drilling through it. Now the other thing too I highly recommend is as you're working along and you're moving to the next step, clean off your workspace. These little metal chips that are on your work table, they're going to end up scratching your powder coat if you leave them just laying around. So we're going to clean up our workspace and then get ready to punch the hole out in the top of the chassis. So the next thing we're going to do is going to be using this little green lead punch. And really easy to get a beautiful hole using one of these things. But there's a couple of little tricks. One of the things, I like to get a little bit of oil and put it on the draw bolt, and also put a little bit, but you don't need a lot, you just put just a little bit on the cutter head. Then this goes through, and I use the punches that have this ball bearing thrust washer. It makes it so much smoother pulling the die through the metal. Put a little piece of paper here like this to protect the powder coating on the top, and then I put the cutter head on the inside, thread this guy down just like this, and right when it's about to touch, kind of wiggle it around a little bit and let it self-center itself. And then you just turn this bolt until it pulls through. and you'll hear three little snaps, and there's your perfect hole. And as you can see, the tube socket sits in there perfectly. I'll show you from the back side. It makes a beautiful installation of the tube socket. So let me do the other two holes, and then we're going to go ahead and drill the hole for the power switch in the side and start looking at the fabrication on the back of the chassis. Okay, got our 3 tube holes punched. They look beautiful. We got all the holes drilled for our transformers, so we're done with the top deck. So we've got one hole to drill in this side. And the hole we need to drill in this side is for the power switch. I want to put it down kind of low like that. And just about like right there. And this isn't critical where this hole goes. So just mark a spot. No, you do have to drill a fairly large size, so you want to make sure that you're not too far down. But we definitely want it on the lower half of this sheet metal. And that should be perfect, like right there. So we simply center punch this, 1/8 drill, 1/4, and then hit it with the big drill. Well, we got a lot of work done today on this project, and I feel like this is gonna really zip together pretty quickly. We're gonna work on the back panel on the next episode, and then jump right into the wiring. So hopefully this will be a fairly short series, and we can get back to our fantastic preamp shootout. So hope you're enjoying the series and the channel. If you are, please subscribe, please like the video, and we'll see you soon for more EL84 amp fun. Have a great day.